This is lesson number 16, and actually, this will see, in our course outline, as we're going through things, this is lesson number 16. This section, which is really this particular tape and the very next tape, tape 17, all really is to do with health readings. We already have covered some information back about maybe lesson 8 or 9 or something it was, where we really went over some of the health readings and things, and we went over the form that we fill out, and we were educating people as to what to look for and what various signs. So this particular lesson, lesson number 16, is all about whole body calibration, with observing movements and the physiognomy, a little iridology I might talk about, a little auricular perhaps. We might talk a little bit about the hands and a few things like this. We have 59 minutes to actually go over a few things that will be really important to you as a Phoenix physician, as to what practical application you can have from this in your ability to observe the things that's happening on the outside of the body and know what's going on inside the brain as a result of these movements that are happening on the outside. So observing movements on the outside of the body gives us a window into the internal matrix of the mind. You could say that these external movement things, external movements are all a way for us to look in and view what's going on inside the mind. For these body movements and things are all portraying states of consciousness and how the mind is processing information. And the next lesson that we have is all about observing whole body movements, basically called tracking. So whole brain functioning, observing and calibrating external movements to internal states, and tracking is observing whole body movements as a literal metaphor for what's going on inside the brain. So both these two classes are very helpful for our Phoenix physicians. I'm going to go over some things, but I'm going to rely upon you to learn more than what it is that I'm going over here. You can pick up a whole brain functioning training manual, a technician's, a practitioner's, or a master track manual, and learn more about all of this. We have this 59 minutes to be with each other, and I'm thinking to myself, what is it that I can share with you that will really be able to help you where you are, be able to get a sense of the very things that actually is going on inside a person. So at the very outset, I might just say simply that someone could have been a cognitive rational therapist and talked about pride until this person was black and blue in the face, but the person might never feel pride unless the shoulders are back and the heart is out. And then it's possible someone can feel pride. But one could talk about pride for eons and never really feel pride unless we adopt the body posture that accesses this state. So the very first thing that we might say is that all body movements help us tune into modality-specific neurology. So it's very interesting that when any person goes to access information that's beyond their present sensory awareness, we go through a series of accessing cues which often are movements which help tune in to modality-specific neurology. So for instance, when the eyebrows are raised like this, that's evidence of more visual processing. Something goes, huh? This is sort of more a visual person. When someone goes, what? You know, and they bring their mouth back like this, or they have some crease motor movements, and so they're feeling and they're sequencing things. Whereas whenever, this quadrant, this lower left quadrant on someone is sort of being active and the person's accessing information more from this quadrant down here, it generally is indicative of internal dialogue. The person can have been talking to themselves. So the usefulness of this information, we're going to be talking more, and I'm going to share with you some very deep insight into observing things that's happening on the outside and being able to know quite a bit about what's going on inside the brain. Because all stuck states can have occurred and generally occurred because there was a sensory system deletion. So all stuck states occurred because there was a sensory system deletion, or there is a sensory system deletion. The omitted sense that ordinarily would be involved in the decision-making strategy being omitted causes the person less than to have excellent ability to make good decisions in life. So for instance, someone who gets up in the morning, they might look outside, that's very visual. They go to the window, that's kinesthetic. They look outside, sort of visual. They walk over to their wardrobe, that's kinesthetic. They look in the wardrobe, they're looking sort of, wondering, looking at visual. And then there might be kinesthetic, visual, visual, kinesthetic, kinesthetic, visual, blah, blah. And this is called a loop, a sensory system loop. It may lessen and be until the person says, I think I... And it is an auditory sense that the person exits from that visual kinesthetic loop. And then the auditory component of the senses is involved in this person's decision-making strategy. So someone who can have been depressed or less than feeling really excellent about things can have been talking to themselves about this, and they're more in this quadrant over here a little bit, talking, they have their head down like this, they're feeling, and they're talking to themselves and feeling, they're talking, but it might not be actually until they use the occipital lobes of the brain that they exit from that auditory kinesthetic loop and they exit into the visual sense that then I can see where I need to go and I can see the big picture. So it's possible for our phoenix physicians to be able to observe and note what this person's sensory specific strategy is, so you can put things in terms to this person that fits with their sensory specific strategy. If in relationship one partner is visual kinesthetic and the other person is kinesthetic auditory, so, this is going to be a little bit of a mismatch, and people might not less than get along with each other quite because there is less than a parallel system being employed. There could be a complementariness actually often in a relationship like this. But so one person says, well, we need to talk about this, before I know what to do, and then, well, why haven't we discussed this? That's very important that we have the ability to communicate. And we can find the words that will really aptly describe where we need to go. So now this is an auditory, kinesthetic person. And now the other person says, you really need to see what I mean. You've got to be able to look at this, and then it's possible we'll be able to get a feeling for what this big picture is all about. And look, I don't want to hear any of these ideas unless they're right, And so now this person used one auditory predicate they didn't want to hear, but all the predicates were visual words and kinesthetic words that the person was employing. And so there can have been a mismatch in the communication. So now I would like for our phoenix physicians to be very listening to you, and but you're using words like, well, you know, we get a clear perspective. We can put a frame of reference around this work, and it's possible that we'll really know what to do. The speaker can have missed the bus and lesson have paced the people who are listening, especially the auditory persons. Auditory persons love it when you will say words that are auditory, because it perfectly fits with them. One of our trainers who lives up in Woodstock, who comes into the city on a regular basis, is a very auditory person. And his partner, she's very visual and kinesthetic. And they less than ever quite got on much because of this major sensory strategy. So for instance, she might come home and she would say, well, she'd be tapping her foot. Well, don't you notice anything? You know, don't you notice anything? And Peter would be going. And all of a sudden he'll say, well, yeah. He was saying, the fringe is really making a lot of noise. He says, no, look, I got my hair done. He goes, oh, wow, oh, yeah. So, and he's, one person could be very really in one sense, the other person could be really in another sense. But you, as a physician, should be very astute, and you'll become aware of your own sensory-specific strategy, and you really can learn to be way less yourself, and you can look around the others' pattern that is excellent, and you can adopt this, not having any set pattern yourself, because you always are putting things in terms of how another person processes information, because it's always up to you as the physician. It's always up to the mature person in the relationship, not the immature person. And it's always up to you to have the responsibility to realize that communication is the response that you get back from the person that you're sitting with and that you're connecting with. It has not anything to do with what your intention was or it is. Well, now let's be really clear. You can have a good your good intention is not worth jack nothing. And I want you to know this, that your response, the response that you get back effectively makes teacher is all about. And look, I don't want to hear any of these ideas unless they're right, you know. And so now this person used one auditory predicate they didn't want to hear, but all the predicates were visual words and kinesthetic words that the person was employing. And so generally there can have been a mismatch in the communication. So, so the person may have used kinesthetic predicates but not really exited into the auditory and the visual. I would recommend to go home, look at some of your writing, look and see what senses you've primarily used. Sit to others in the next few days that's to come, sit and this way. And though some novel and very interesting facts and information can be presented, I'm sure that you're going to be going, gee, that's right, that makes sense to me, this makes sense to me. And it will make sense because it will jive with things you already have a deep understanding about. So you have great wisdom, every person here, and we're going to do what we can to make sure we pace this intelligence and that we're reminded always of this intelligence. Okay, I hope that you've enjoyed this class. I look forward to catching up with you for the next class. And so for those people who are listening to tape, this is tape 1 and the next tape is tape 2. And the very first tape after this is all about what? On our handout is? Huh? This way. And those are novel and good. It's got pro-opium, melanocortin, it's got melatonin, it's got all these. It's got pro-opium, melanocortin, it's got melatonin. This way. And those are novel and very interesting facts and information can be presented. I'm sure that you're going to be going, gee, that's right, that makes sense to me, this makes sense to me. And it will make sense because it will jive with things you already have a deep understanding about. So you have a great wisdom, every person here, and we're going to do what we can to make sure we pace this intelligence and that we're reminded always of this intelligence. Okay, I hope that you've enjoyed this class. I look forward to catching up with you for the next class. And so for those people who are listening to tape, this is tape 1 and the next tape is tape 2. And the very first tape after this is all about what? On our handout it is? Huh? Okay. This area is about functional anatomy and body systems. And the very first class that we're going to be covering is all about digestion and assimilation. So anyway, I hope you're having a wonderful day where you are, and I look forward to catching up with you in a little while. Thank you. thing run like 20 minutes, and so I'm really glad everybody was, I kept everybody's attention, and so we're going to really do what we can to make things exciting and interesting for you. I think the information itself is exciting enough. So, do we have any questions before we wrap up? And maybe just a couple of questions, because I have a feeling that there's people who want to get back to the kids and other things and what have you. Okay. Okay. Please.
Oh, got a deeper question.
Go on.
When you start out into the blood purification, lymph revitalization,
Yes.
herbs,
Yes.
is it still perfectly safe to do 95% of your urine? No problem.
Oh, it is.
It's not throwing stuff out into
Oh,
the
no.
air that we don't want to
No.
take back in.
Oh, no. Oh, yes, it is.
Fine.
Yes, it's so wonderful because the urine has isopathic and homeopathic dilute solutions of what has entered into the blood from the herbs. It's such a perfect information for educating the immune system to recognise all of these components and things. And then mustard was useful that find its way into the blood can be reabsorbed across the intestinal lumen without any work. See, so it's marvellous. So you have a better effect. Just less hurt. First urine of the day is so wonderful because that's got the great mother hormones in it. It's got proopium, melanocortin, it's got melatonin, it's got all these wonderful substances that can make you feel just amazing through the day. And most people have a deeper meditative state and have oxygenated their blood more and all of this sort of thing. The very beneficial urine is in the morning's urine. Urine throughout the day is a wonderful thing too.
How many times do you drink in a day?
Well, I drink whenever it is that I've actually had a beverage, and I have a beverage mostly. Just to sort of sit, and I still like to do this a little, you know. I like to sit and there it is, and I'll write a little bit, it's something there. And then when I go out, I like to have a little tea or something. So it's sort of more a social thing more than anything else. Yes, it's probably more a social thing than anything else. So I drink and I drink. I eat. Yeah.
Do you drink whiskey?
Do I drink whiskey? I might have a little bit of alcohol every now and then. But I, for some reason, I just never really took to that. But you know, I just want to let you know that I know a lot of drunk people. And I've really been around a lot of drunk people, you know, so I know all about this. And I'll just share with you that I know some people and they love to drink and they have a drink every day and they love it. But they're not gluttons. And most of these people, they really do live for a long time. And so there's plenty of historical evidence of people who were drunk every day, and they lived a long time because they were not a glutton. So. Okay.
Just starting out trying to get my urine, as I told you.
Yeah.
Can you mix it in the smoothies and things like that?
I know people who disguise it sometimes for the kids and things a little bit, you know, and you can disguise it, and it will be, you know, have its benefit and things. Of course, the very best is straight up or on the rocks.
I know.
What's the difference between knocking it back and then going and grabbing some nut milk?
Yes, you can chase it, but eventually you should go into it, and you go, and so whatever was repelling, you go, but actually, you know, if you ever eat microhydrates, that tastes like stale pig, you know, and I love that. I love that. I've grown to love that, and I just like, that's like a candy bean. It tastes like stale pig.
Now, if somebody's toxic, they shouldn't drink.
Okay. If somebody's toxic, like they were going to die, they should drink their urine because it will save their life. It will save their life. But how did some of these alchemists who were poisoned, like Rasputin, survive? Rasputin was poisoned several times and was given enough poison to kill a large So now, if somebody's on chemicals and all sorts of things, we say, look, that's dangerous. And we say, let go of those chemicals and drink your urine. And so if the person was on chemicals, we say, do much less of those chemicals as you drink your urine. And these are all great things. Our urine has the perfect substances within it for the moment. And that's more perfect than anything else. So if somebody's sick, they absolutely should drink your urine. If somebody's not sick, you say, well, you might like to drink it if you like, but if you're sick, you should absolutely drink your urine. Because it has everything in it that alerts the body.
Another consideration with the toxicity, is that it was just
Oh.
in your blood.
Okay, so most people know about this mostly because of the information that I put out, actually. So I always have said, hey, there's 200 times more toxins in your urine when you fast. A lot of people go, oh my God, when you shouldn't drink urine, there's a lot of toxins in there. I go, oh my God, those toxins are nothing in comparison to the toxins in the intestinal tract. Oh my God, it's unbelievable, wasn't it? And then you're just going to drink a little bit of urine, you're going to put that in, pick a little whatever that's there back in your intestine, that's just going to be defecated out. That's not going to go anywhere, none of those toxins, except just out of the body. And whatever useful components in the urine is excellent, and that's really going to have a use. So it's perfect where one is, the urine.
I was just going to suggest that somebody I know who was having trouble with the taste or the idea of it, Cicada, remember she used to put her shot glasses, little shot glasses in the freezer.
Yes, freezing this.
Yeah,
Make it chill.
yeah, so she used to chill it, or just,
Oh, she had a shot glass in the freezer.
Yeah,
She would
so
take
it's
her shot
cold.
glass out of the freezer, it's frozen. She would collect some of the beer of that, which was chilled a bit, and then she would sort of down that.
Rather that.
But if you chill it, it doesn't quite have its flavour like it does at room temperature, which that's how I like it. I like it room temperature. All right. Okay. All right. Love you guys. We'll see you on Wednesday. Oh. Well,
Thank you. Very much.
course, he did say a lot, but not through his voice. So, you know, so just talk about silence. I've got realization or charity. He said some most beautiful sort of things that were teachings, that were things like you might say, it's something my grandfather would say that he said was very nice. He said, no matter how far you go out there, he would say, no matter how far, he would say, one might less than have remembered. It's not a very beautiful language. One might less than have remembered. Less than have remembered to forget themselves. This comes from our Bible. Then another one he would say, it's like this, where he would say, no matter how far somebody would travel inside himself, how deep that would go within itself, and hopefully one can remember to exercise a charitableness with forgiveness. It was just some very simple sort of things that he said, which were incredible. You know? No, he passed away about 15 years ago. Something like that. I remember when he passed away. Out of all the teachers, he is sort of one of the teachers that sort of I've really followed quite a bit over the years, and what he wrote and what people said. Another teacher